glad everybody's here. I talk with a lot of people, and most of the time, the one thing that I hear about is people that are resisting coming to Christ just because they feel like they have to clean themselves up first. Oh, I can't come to God like this. I gotta change my ways, and that's not the way it works. Anybody who has read the Bible or even gone to Sunday school knows that you can't clean yourself up enough to warrant God's favor. It is the work that Christ did on the cross. It is His blood that is shed, and that free gift, if we accept it, that makes us worthy to come before Him and become before the throne of God and to be one of His children. Another thing is, can God use me? Can God use me when I'm in this imperfect state? Okay, now I've gotten saved, but can God really use me? I'm still doing some bad things. God's working that out, but can I be used? And if we've accepted Jesus and follow and allow God to use us, then the answer is definitely yes. But I still smoke and drink and go out with wild women or men, then stop. It's not easy, but if you let God work those things out of you, then they will go away. You will be transformed if you let Him just work in you. You don't stop smoking overnight. Some do. I've had some people that were delivered from cigarettes just like that. They just said, I don't like these anymore, and I'm not going to do it. They threw them away and never went back. And other people, it took them years, and then they fell back, and it's, so it's something they struggled with. And there's many other things. I struggle with fried chicken. I love fried chicken. This is not by a good exercise and everything. This is by a lot of bad things I eat. So you want to do things that will please God, that are good for you. And the things in the Bible are definitely things that are good for you. We're going to talk about some people, and people that did not have faith to begin with, and that God used anyway. So it just shows that even a little bit of faith, that God can use you. We're going to take Moses. Moses was brought up in Pharaoh's household. I'm shortening the story here. And probably only had a cursory knowledge of God the Most High. He probably had a good knowledge of false Egyptian gods, though, being brought up in Pharaoh's household where they worship Ra and other gods. So pretend you're Moses out in the desert, and if you saw a bush on fire, not being burned up, what would be your reaction? Amazement? Astonishment? Fear? I'd be terrified, personally, especially when the big booming voice comes out and says my name, and who are you? I am. Yeah, I'm pretty much going to be terrified at that point, because I don't know. If I didn't know God, I would definitely be terrified at that point. But Moses heard the great I am and was afraid, but not afraid enough not to argue with the Lord, as we'll see in Exodus 4:10-17. But Moses replied to the Lord, "Please, Lord, I have never been eloquent." I can relate to that. "Either in the past or recently, since you have been speaking to your servant, because I am slow and hesitant in speech." Yahweh said to him, "Who made the human mouth? Who makes him mute or deaf, seeing or blind? Is it not I, Yahweh? Now go, and I will help you speak, and I will teach you what to say." Moses said, "Please, Lord, send someone else." Yep, had to argue a little bit, right? Booming voice, bush not being consumed, still going to argue with somebody who's definitely got something more going on than he did. Still going to argue. Then the Lord's anger burned against Moses, and he said, "Isn't Aaron the Levite your brother? I know he can speak well, and also he is on the way now to meet you. He will rejoice when he sees you. You will speak with him and tell him what to say. I will help both you and him to speak and teach you both what to do. He will speak to the people for you. He will be your spokesman, and you will serve as God to him. And take the staff in your hand that you will perform the signs with." So right there, God wasn't going to let him off the hook. You go, okay, all right, yeah, okay, maybe you're not the one. God wanted to use Moses. Moses was the man of the hour. That is the one God wanted to use. And God, he wasn't going to let him off the hook just because he was whining about the fact that I don't speak well or anything like that. He was going to have Moses do because he wanted to teach Moses something. He wanted to teach Moses, and he wanted, most of all, to teach his people, the people of Israel, what it was to have faith. You know, that God could deliver them from their situation. And what can we see from these verses? Whom God calls, he also equips. He equipped Moses with the speech by using his brother. He equipped Moses with the ability to do signs and wonders in his name. He equipped those who he calls. Joseph, this is one of my favorite stories. Joseph, who obviously didn't have a filter, if you've ever read the story, he didn't have a filter on what he said to his brothers that, hey, maybe that's not a good thing to say to my older brothers or anything, you know, or my half-brothers. He was sold into slavery because his other brothers didn't like him. He wound up as a slave in Potiphar's house. And Potiphar put Joseph in charge over all his household and property because of the favor of God that was on him. So he had, if Joseph said it, it was just like Potiphar had said it. He took care of all the land, all the assets of the household. And Potiphar's wife lusted after Joseph and wanted to get frisky, but Joseph was not about to betray the man who trusted him to run things. She grabbed him and he ran out of the house to avoid any perception of evil doing. Unfortunately, he ran out of the house and she was still holding some of his garment. So she lied to to her husband, that Joseph tried to rape her, and it just lied to him. So I think that Potiphar maybe had a little inkling that maybe it wasn't true, but he had to do something, so he threw him in jail. Because otherwise that would have been an executable offense, I'm sure, in that household. But God's favor was still on Joseph, and even as the captain of the guard there in the prison, put him in charge over all the prisoners. So if Joseph said something, it was just like the captain of the guard had said it. Now that's quite a bit of favor, really. He goes into his terrible situation. You know, he's sold into slavery. Favor of God comes about upon him when he's sold into Potiphar's house. He gets favor there. He becomes out of favor because of a lie. The devil tried to come in and steal the thunder, but God was not going to have that. He was going to make sure that God's favor, that his favor followed Joseph wherever he went. And there was a reason for all that. And the ending is just absolutely wonderful. So the captain, he had all the captain's authority, and while he was there, the baker and the cupbearer fell out of favor with the Pharaoh. And while he was there, after some time, the baker and the cupbearer had dreams. The cupbearer had a dream, and Joseph interpreted for him. Said that he would be restored back to his original position with Pharaoh. And the baker said, well, interpret my dream. Well, that one was not as pleasant. And he was not going to be restored, and he was going to be hanged. And it happened just as Joseph had interpreted. So Joseph said to the cupbearer, says, when you're restored, please remember me to the Pharaoh. Well, apparently, when he got restored, he forgot about Joseph. And it was some time before his name was brought up again. Pharaoh had a dream. And the cupbearer said to Pharaoh that, hey, I remember somebody when I was in prison that can interpret dreams. And they brought Joseph up there. And Joseph interpreted the dream, and it was 7 years of feast. There was going to be plenty, and then there was 7 years of famine. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, what can we do? So he made Pharaoh saw the favor of God upon him and gave him authority, second only to Pharaoh, to take and do something about this coming up problem. God gave them a heads up. So they stored all this grain and everything, so that when the famine did come, there were people from other nations that were coming to buy food from Egypt. And here's where the rubber meets the road. Joseph's brother from Canaan came to buy food, which Joseph had to authorize, and Joseph recognized them. So the brothers found out who he was, and they were afraid that Joseph would take revenge. But Joseph said this in Genesis 45. So Joseph said to his brothers, "Come near to me, please." And they came near. And he said, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land for these 2 years, and yet there are 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. He has made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of his house, and ruler over the land of Egypt." Now Joseph saw the hand of God give him favor throughout his entire life there. And it was for that one purpose: to save as many people as could, because there was going to be a famine. Save Joseph's family. He had faith that God was going to deliver him. And God did deliver him from each and every adversity. Through his faith, God used him. David was the youngest of his brothers and the brunt of the litter. Even his father did not see the hand of God on him. We all remember reading about the brave David who fought Goliath and who had a heart after God. He was also fearful when King Saul was hunting him. Once king, he had a friend murdered so he could have his wife, yet God used him to guide Israel. Even with all his faults and imperfections, God still said, He loves me. He has a heart for me. So with that being said, why try to hide from him? Give him these things that are in your heart, the things that are burdening you, and let him mold you into a new person. Because if you're not happy with the person you are, or where you think you're going in your life, there's only one way to do anything about it, and that is to pray about it. You can try to do it yourself, but I can guarantee you that it's going to go right off of the ditches, as it so much does. And the people that are not following God in this world, that have lots of money, this is their reward. They will have no other thing, no other opportunity once they're standing before judgment. This is it. You had your money. Well, you left me out of the picture. I don't know you. Peter, this is one that really is outstanding. Peter walked with Jesus, sat under his teaching, broke bread with him, walked with him, spoke with him. And Peter even said when Jesus was about to get arrested, that he would not let the soldiers take him. When the soldiers came, Peter denied Jesus, that he knew Jesus 3 times. Yet even though Jesus knew Peter would deny him, he told Peter this in Matthew 16:18. Matthew 16. "And I also say to you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the forces of Hades will not overpower it." So even though Peter denied Christ, he still used him to build his church. That's pretty mighty. If God can use all these people that have had all these flaws and faults and things, He certainly can use us. It's not that hard for God to use us and let His light shine through us. And in 2 Corinthians it says, "But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for power is perfected in weakness. Therefore, I most gladly boast all the more about my weakness, so that Christ's power may reside in me. So I take pleasure in weakness, insults, catastrophes, and persecutions, and in pressures, because of Christ. For when I am weak, then I am strong, through the power of Jesus." And lastly, let's look at Paul. Before Paul was Paul, his name was Saul, and persecuted Christians, or as they were referred to at the time, followers of the way. Saul threw believers in jail, had them executed. He was feared among followers of Jesus because they knew everywhere he went, death followed. So in Acts 9, 3-9, it says, and this is talking about Jesus, as he traveled and was nearing Damascus, I was talking about Paul. As he traveled and was nearing Damascus, a light from heaven suddenly flashed around him. Falling to the ground, he heard a voice saying to him, "Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?" "Who are you, Lord?" he said. "I am Jesus, the one you are persecuting," he replied. "But get up and go into the city, and you will be told what you must do." The men who were traveling with him stood speechless, hearing the sound, but seeing no one. Then Saul got up from the ground, and though his eyes were open, he could see nothing. So they took him by the hand and led him into Damascus. He was unable to see for 3 days and did not eat or drink. God changed his name from Saul to Paul when he went on to evangelize the Gentiles. So what can we get from all this? Number one, God is bigger than us, and He has the whole picture. 2, God can use you no matter where you are in your life's journey and no matter your failing or flaws. And where we see a failure, sin, in a person of no consequence, God sees something completely different. He can use you, and He can make you the person that you know inside you want to be, and let God do it and make you just shine for Him. It doesn't matter what your flaws are or what you've done before, what you're doing now. It matters if you're going to go ahead and let God use you, because He can. If He can use a murderer, if He can use an adulterer, if He can use somebody who's thrown into slavery, He will make it turn out for good for those who believe Him. So Nada, some say, how can I do great things for the Lord? And it really depends on what you call great. If you're thinking of filled stadiums and people come to hear you preach is great, then you may want to go back and pray about that. Because not everyone is called for that. And if you don't think it comes with its own set of traps to be wary of, you're quite mistaken. But to be able to make a difference and really do great things is to make a difference for the people that are around you, the people that you come in contact with. It's those small things that make a great difference in somebody's life. It's not the big gestures, it's the kind gestures. You know, it's helping somebody with their groceries. It's saying, hey, have a blessed day. You know, just planting those seeds wherever you can. That's what makes the difference. It's not the grandiose gestures. It's the little things that you can do for those that you come in contact with. Your family, your friends, people that you just meet, people at the store. It's being able to show that love of Jesus to everyone, and that is what makes a difference. That concludes today's message.